Hello, good morning, good afternoon, welcome. There's a question I get asked more than any other. When will we stop using fossil fuels? It's the wrong question. The right question is, when do fossil fuels assets stop making money? Because that is what actually drives change. Not policy targets, not climate summits, not protest marches, balance sheets. And the answer is, it's already started. Let me walk you through how this works because the mechanics of fossil fuel stranding are more interesting and more ruthless than most people realize. Think about a coal-fired power station. It was built 20 or 30 years ago at enormous capital cost. The economics are straightforward. You buy fuel, you burn it, you sell electricity. Your ongoing costs, the operational expenditure, are dominated by the fuel price. Coal, gas, whatever it is, you're permanently exposed to commodity markets. Now, a solar farm goes up nearby. It has high upfront costs, capital costs, capex. But once it's built, the fuel is free. Photons do not have a spot price. The operational costs are close to zero, perhaps 1 or 2% of the capital costs per year. And every year, the cost of building the next solar farm falls further because manufacturing drives scale, drives learning curves, and that in a way that extracting fossil fuels can never compete. What happens? The solar farm sells electricity into the grid at whatever price it can get because its marginal cost is effectively zero. The coal plant, which needs a minimal electricity price just to cover its fuel costs, starts losing money during sunny hours, then during sunny and windy hours, then during most hours. And the utilization rate falls. The economics collapse, not because someone banned coal, but because the market did what markets do. Now let's talk about oil, because oil is where the stranding dynamic gets really interesting. Global oil demand in 2025 was approximately 103 million barrels per day. China consumes about 15 million barrels of that, roughly 14%. But China's EV fleet is now approaching 45 million vehicles. Last year, they sold 12 million electric vehicles. That's 3 times the combined total of Europe and America in 1 year. So they are on a curve now and they're growing exponentially. For every 100 million EVs that China will begin to add to their fleet, maybe, once every few years, global oil demand will decrease by approximately 1.5 million barrels of oil per day. In addition to those EVs, there's electric trucking, there's electric powertrains across the logistics sector. They've got electric boats in their huge inland shipping. They're all going to begin to continue on the current trajectory of beginning to use less oil. So China alone could reduce its oil consumption by approximately 10 million barrels per day within a decade. And they have all of their interests are for them to do that because they own all of the electric drivetrains and they're going to be making it cheaper. And the marginal cost of being electric and moving goods and people with electricity is much cheaper. So that's it's going to happen. To put that in context, during the 1973 oil crisis, which was triggered by a disruption of about 4 million barrels of oil a day restricted to the market. And here's what the oil industry doesn't really want you to think about. This demand destruction, it's not supply disruption. You cannot fix demand destruction by just drilling more. There is no OPEC meeting that solves it. There's no geopolitical lever that oil companies can do to reverse the demand destruction. When someone buys an electric vehicle, they're not going to go and buy a more expensive internal combustion engine vehicle next. So I find it genuinely difficult to understand how the fossil fuel industry continues to invest hundreds of billions in new exploration production when the demand trajectory is clear. I sometimes think of it through the lens of Sun Tzu about turning your opponent's strength into a weakness. The strength of the fossil fuel system has always been its incumbency, its scale, its political connections, but that very incumbency also makes it slow to adapt. Those very assets, their refineries, are becoming liabilities as their utilization falls. Dong Energy is a Danish company whose name literally stood for Danish oil and natural gas. They rebranded as Ørsted and they've become a specialist offshore wind business. They saw it early, but most people haven't. It's not just upstream. Think about refineries. A refinery is an optimized to process crude oil into a specific mix of products, petrol, diesel, jet fuel, petrochemicals. As oil demand declines, it will not decline evenly across all of those products. I think jet fuel kerosene is likely to hold up much longer than petrol, but a refinery cannot simply decide to produce only kerosene. There are very few refineries that have that flexibility. The chemistry just doesn't work that way. So only a few refineries will be able to adjust their product mix significantly. The rest face a choice between running at lower utilization or shutting down. The same logic applies to the entire fossil fuel supply chain. The pipelines, the tankers, the storage terminals, the trading desks, every link in that chain, right down to the petrol station, was sized and financed on the assumption of growing or at least stable demand. But when that demand falls, the whole chain suffers. And there is something else. In July 2023, it was revealed that the UK's Energy and Utilities Association, which represents gas boiler manufacturers, had paid a PR firm to generate hundreds of negative stories about heat pumps for over 2 years. False claims that heat pumps do not work in the UK climate, despite Norway, which is far colder, having Europe's highest heat pump penetration and adoption rate. The UK minister called it, frankly, a disgrace. And this is what stranding looks like from the inside. When an industry moves from competing on merit to competing on misinformation, it tells you something about how the economics have shifted. You do not pay PR firms to attack your competitors if you're winning on price. And the E-flip doesn't end resistance through persuasion. It ends with balance sheets. It ends with economics. As electrified alternatives become cheaper to build and cheaper to operate, the financial logic of fossil fuel assets deteriorates. And this is not a future scenario, it's already visible in coal plant closures, refinery consolidations, and the growing gap between oil company valuations and the replacement cost of their reserves. The stranding cycle is structural, and it's begun. Thank you very much. If you want to learn more, you can buy the book, Electrostate. Many thanks. Bye bye.